So please give us your reaction to the findings from the Williams Lake First Nation.
I had discussed this before, that there would be many of these kinds of announcements coming forward in the next couple of years. And so this is another major one. And I think, you know, what Chief Sellers talked about, those horrors that our children endured, is an important part of the story. And as we make these announcements, what's really important is to remember that these were little children, and they really suffered in these institutions. And that every time we recover more of them, we have that proof that indeed genocide has happened in Canada. And that's really important, to acknowledge that there must be truth before reconciliation. Then I heard the Prime Minister actually use that term when he did visit to Kamloops after September 30th. So I think we're getting to a place where we are starting to acknowledge the truth of this country and some of the horrific things that happened to our children.
National Chief, they found 93 sites, 50 of them not associated with a previously known cemetery there. Is the First Nation expecting more discoveries of unmarked graves at this particular site? I know this is just a preliminary finding, or at other institutions across the country.
Well, this one will definitely have more recoveries. I was there. I actually walked part of those grounds with Chief Sellers in early October. He invited me to go to his community and to that site, and I've seen it. It's massive. It's a huge area. There are many parts of that land where children could be buried that haven't been covered by those colors that they presented on screen. So there's still land to be covered, areas to be covered. And there's going to be more recoveries for certain there, and there will be recoveries across Canada. I mean, we know these things happened as First Nations people. We know the truth. And now everybody else gets to understand that truth with us. And, you know, we had a meeting with the chiefs before this announcement so that the chiefs of the communities who had survivors go there talked about it. And one of the things that one of the chiefs talked about is the importance of having these reports recognize these children, that what we're talking about is the horrors that happen to children, and those children need to be found and named. They have names, they have families, they were loved. And not to look at this story as, oh, here we go, another set of recoveries. We have to make sure that each time we go through this process that we're moving on the road to healing, on what I always call the healing path forward. The healing path forward means that every time we make a recovery, we're doing something about it. We're not just, you know, triggered by it, which we all are. I mean, it's so difficult. On that call, you know, a number of leaders were very distraught, very upset. And even I, you know, every time this happens, I go through my own emotional roller coaster on it, knowing that, you know, I come from two parents who went to those institutions. You know, Evan, you and I don't call them schools anymore. You know, because as I've always said, no school I ever attended had unmarked graves filled with children. So I think we should just drop the school's name of it and just call them what they were, which is institutions of assimilation and genocide.
You and I have spoken a lot about that. I have never on air called them, only when the name is there, but I always refer to them as institutions, as you and I have both talked about many times, National Chief. No school anyone goes to has a cemetery and was like this. These were not schools. Just before I let you go, because this is, you know, I think you're right to say the names. We heard the name Duncan Sticks, 8 years old, froze to death, fleeing the torture at this institution. We expect more of this. Is there any response you are looking for from the federal government on this?
Yeah, I did actually text Minister Mark Miller when I knew that the report was going to come out. And I am calling on Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to continue to invest in healing. I have been calling since I've been elected for a national healing foundation, a national healing process. What this government has done is taken funding and certainly directed it to those communities that have these sites and provided them with funding. The thing is, children from right across this whole country went to these institutions. We need a national healing process for all of First Nations across Canada and even Canadians, because I know we have many allies out there who have said, I want to do something about it. I'm triggered by this. I want to be a part of that healing process. So we need to invest in that.
Listen, I can see your phone's ringing off the hook, and that people want to get your reaction to this horrific discovery, which I totally understand. National Chief RoseAnne Archibald of the Assembly of First Nations, I really appreciate it. The whole country grieves when we find out these are not numbers, folks. These are kids. These are names. These are people. And we'll learn their identities over time. Thank you, National Chief.
Thank you, Evan. Take care.
Yeah, you too. So that is the National Chief of the Assembly of First Nations. And again, how do you react to this? Kids were ripped out of their families and sent to an institution where, look what happened to them. And there's many more to come. For the Indigenous community, the pain trauma of residential institutions is intergenerational. For survivors and families, there is a crisis line available 24 hours a day. I'm going to just share you that number, 1-866-925-4419.